Welcome, everyone. This is a virtual meeting of RBKC's Licensing Subcommittee, and I'm Councillor Soph McVeigh, and I'll be chairing this meeting. It's being held via Microsoft Teams, and it's also being streamed live. And if you have any connection issues, I believe you've all been sent how to contact Leonie and how to log back in again. I'm accompanied on the committee by two other councillors, Councillor Schmetterling and Councillor Healy. Would you please like to introduce yourselves?
Well, I'm Dorrit Schmetterling from Pembridge Ward.
I'm Councillor Pat Healy from Dalgarno Ward.
Thank you. And today we are considering a variation application in respect of Londish Shop on 237 Kings Road. And the papers relating to the application are publicly available, and I hope all parties have received them and read them. Before we start, a few administration matters I'd like to deal with. If I do lose control, I would like to nominate a substitute chair, and I'd like to nominate Councillor Schmetterling. Councillor Healy, can you please second my nomination, please?
Yes, by all means, I'm happy to second.
Thank you so much. So if I do lose connection, Councillor Schmetterling will become chair for this hearing. And another matter is also declarations of interest. I declare I have no interest in this application. Committee, can you please let me know?
This is Dorrit Schmetterling. I have no interest in this matter, in this case at all.
Thank you.
Hello, Councillor Healy. I have no interest in this matter either.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And we are joined remotely by Paul Phelan and Fiona Johnson from the Council's licensing team. Can you please confirm your attendance?
Present, Chair.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And our legal advisor is Heidi Titchcombe. Can you please confirm your attendance?
Thank you, Chair. I'm here. I should just mention that Lindsay is not here today.
Okay, thank you. And we're also accompanied by our committee officers, Martin Carver and Leonie Hill, who'll be monitoring all our connections. And can you please confirm your attendance as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm here doing the notes.
I'm here also.
Thank you very much. And the applicants today, I understand that Arlene of Demur, please correct my pronunciation. You're going to be the legal representative for the applicant today. Can you please confirm your attendance? Arlene?
Muted.
I think you may still be on mute.
Yes, sorry, I am here. I am not a legal individual as such. My association is that I have done all their personal license training, and I have also done the application for variation for the premises.
Okay,
so I don't
thank
want
you for
to
clarifying that. And can you please let me know how I pronounce your surname?
Aftermauer.
Aftermauer. Thank you very much. Thank you. And today, whilst I just want to let everyone know that whilst there have been 6 representations opposing the application, no objectors are intending to attend today's hearing. Before we start the case, just a few ground rules. If everyone could keep themselves on mute unless they are speaking, and turn cameras off again unless they are speaking. And please, mobile phones on silent because they do have a habit to go off during meetings. Thank you. I will briefly outline the procedure for this for the meeting. We'll first of all have the licensing officer give us a brief outline of the application, and then we will turn to the applicant, Arlene, to do the submission. And then members of the committee will ask Arlene for some questions, and then normally would have the objectors asking you questions. But because we don't have any objectors here today, we will obviously, as a committee, cover all those concerns. And then we will have our legal officer, Ms. Titchcombe, will ask any questions she may have, particularly regarding some of the conditions. And there'll be no summing up, and the meeting will come to an end. And the decision will not be announced today, but will be circulated in 5 working days. Thank you. And in terms of additional documents, I believe a plan has been circulated, which we should all have received. So I think we're going to get going now. Arlene, would you mind putting yourself on mute, please? Just because it really helps with feedback and everything.
Okay.
Thank you. So is it Mr. Phelan or Ms. Johnson doing the outlining the application?
It will be me today, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Phelan. Would you like to continue? And just to let everyone know that on the screen, you should be able to see the committee papers. So if there's anything you'd like our attention to be drawn to, if you could just give us the page number, and then we can direct the committee papers to the relevant page. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. Today's application is made by Mr. Shailesh Natubai Patel for the variation of a premises licence at Londis 237 Kings Road, London, SW3 5EJ. The original application sought to extend the hours for the sale by retail of alcohol off the premises until 3 a.m, Monday to Sunday. However, this was revised to 2 a.m. following discussions with the Metropolitan Police. In addition to amending the hours sought for the sale by retail of alcohol, the applicant, Mr. Patel, agreed to include 3 additional steps as part of the operating schedule. A list of these proposed conditions can be found on page 2 of the committee papers. A full list of the steps volunteered by the applicant to promote the licence and objectives can be found at pages 2 and 3 of today's papers. 6 representations have been received which oppose this application. This includes an objection from the Poulton Square Residents Association. A summary of these representations can be found on pages 4 to 5, with copies attached at Appendix C on pages 27 to 35. This application did not attract a representation from any responsible authority. Council records indicate that no complaints or temporary event notices were received in the preceding 12 months. That concludes the summary of this application. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that concise summary. Arlene, we're now going to turn to you, please. If you could outline the applicant's case. You have up to 10 minutes to make your submission, and take yourself off mute. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to address the one sort of common issue with all the objections, and that they all state that it will make the residents' life a misery if such an application is allowed to go ahead. And also to point out to those persons who objected to the time of the ending of the activity at 3 a.m. that it is now at 2 a.m. with agreement with the police. When I spoke to the police and during conversation, and I did ask if there were any issues that surrounded the Londis shop regarding street drinkers, any revelers congregating around there after the club at any time, and they said no. I asked if there were any problems at all associated with the premises, and have they been called at any time recently, and they said no. So I find it rather difficult that people are objecting and citing Londis as the anticipated nuisance, possibly anticipated nuisance associated with Londis opening for longer, more extended hours. And I suggest that it's the clubs that were the responsible persons for not ensuring that the persons attending those clubs that drank for perhaps more than they should, which shouldn't have been allowed in the first place, because under the objective of prevention of crime and disorder, they shouldn't have been serving people who were already drunk or showing any signs of drunkenness. So they shouldn't have been going outside and causing such problems because of drunkenness. And you can't really put that at Londis's door, because they have not had any issues with street drinking and any revelers being outside their premises doing such activity. The delivery, I'm going a lot by different objectives. So this is from Vianney Vecchini. he asked about the drivers, the delivery drivers. These delivery drivers will be from Deliveroo, who are trained in the licensing objectives, and they are trained not to cause any nuisance any more than is absolutely necessary in the area, and not to cause nuisance at all, in fact. So it's not individual drivers who will be employed by Mr. Patel. It will be proper recognized company that will be making these deliveries. And he also goes on to state that the council's policy states that there are many small general stores close by in the area serving alcohol for retail by off sale. In fact, Londis is the only shop in the vicinity serving alcohol, and the nearest one, nearest other off sales is in the petrol station at on Anderson Street. And as far as we're aware, there have been no problems associated with late night drinking with that particular venue. So I'm not sure why Londis should be singled out or pointed at for anticipated disorder problems when there hasn't been any at the nearest one so far. Also, even though the council policy states that there are many general stores and so on selling alcohol, and that they would like people to be more responsible, or businesses to be more responsible, in view of the COVID situation now, the council has actually written to business owners, and the letter dated the 17th of June 2020, stating that if you are a food and beverage business, you may consider extending your opening hours for the sale of alcohol, which is exactly what Mr. Patel has done. He's taken the opportunity to extend the sale because his business has been severely impacted, not just with alcohol, but in general, because of the COVID situation. So that's Mr. Viana Bikini concerns. Mr. Gavin Doyle, the shop operates in a mixed residential and commercial area, residence above commercial premises. So everyone emphasizes that it is a residential area. In fact, it is a mixed area, mixed residential area, because many of the premises are above commercial premises. So the residents are above commercial premises. So it's not totally residential, as it might suggest in the letters and the objections. And another, Mr. A. Cleal, maintains that the deposits of cans and bottles outside of their homes, especially on Brumerton Road. And do we have any proof that this is from Londis? And has there been any problems associated with drinking as a consequence of purchase from the shop? Can anyone cite any of those issues? And has the police been called to deal with any problems associated with Londis? I'm not aware of that so far, after speaking to Mr. Patel. Dr. Treacher, does current trade cause a nuisance? And if so, has the police been informed? How many times within the last 12 months, for instance, have the police been called, or even within recent times, even during the time when the clubbers and revelers are on the street? And all the objections, to me, seems as if they're historical and also not targeted towards Londis, because Londis has not been cited so far as being any cause for or any issues in the area due to drinking and at late hours. However, I won't linger on that, but I was going to propose some mitigating circumstances which we could perhaps help towards alleviating some of these concerns. And as I said, no problems currently in the shop reported by Mr. Patel or by the police. So all the persons who will be in the shop at times when the shop is operating, there will be personal license holders. I have done the training for 3 of those personal license holders myself, and I have believe I have trained them thoroughly, and that they are very much aware of the issues and the licensing objectives that they should be upholding, which is why I wasn't more vigorous with the licensing objectives when stated on the application form, because I knew they knew what they're not to do and what they can do. Also, during the time from 11 to 2 p.m., as the police states, there will be at least 2 staff on duty during that period. The emergency button will be reinstalled, which is linked to the police. Social distancing will also be observed. And this will be quite easy to do because the doors and the shutters will remain closed from 11 p.m. But you can see through the shutters, so you can see who is going to enter the shop, if any at all. Sales will be made only to persons who are known to the staff in the shop. Sales cannot be made to drunk persons, and often you can see when someone who is inebriated is trying to purchase alcohol, they will not be allowed entry into the shop. And for prevention of public nuisance, we cannot be held responsible for people drinking at other venues coming to the shop. And if they are drunk, as I said, they won't be served. They have been approached, Londis has been approached by occasional street drinkers, but they are never served. They are never allowed into the shop because the staff are aware that they do drink on the street, and they know that they should not encourage such behavior. The delivery drivers from Deliveroo, it is not anticipated that they'll be congregating outside and talking on their phones and talking loudly and making lots of noise. They will be coming, receiving the goods because it will be ready for them. It will be, because it will be ordered beforehand, handed through to them at the door, and off they go again. And during the time from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., we propose that multiple cans or bottles of beer are sold. And it would appear, it seems, that single cans are easier to aid street drinking, but multiples are normally taken home. So therefore, they shouldn't be drinking on the street. And this is what research has found. The other mitigating circumstance we propose is that perhaps we could limit the alcohol by volume to maybe 6.5%, or that chosen by the licensing authority during the hours from 11 to 2. And the other point, all individual cans and bottles to be labelled showing the Londis label. So therefore, this would help to identify where, in any circumstances, any items are discarded, any bottles or any cans are discarded, will be identifiable as being from Londis. We also ask if there could be a probationary period of perhaps 6 months. And if any problems were to present themselves due to Londis having an extended hours then of operation, then we would revert to the original hours of 11 p.m., 8 till 11 p.m. It is also, we are trying to also mitigate the fact that the costs for Mr. Patel has gone up even during this COVID period, and he needs to recoup some of these costs. And he, as the council has invited him to extend his licensable activities and hours, this is what he's trying to do. His rent has increased in July by 10%, and it's been backdated to September 2018 plus interest. It is now 88,500, and he's quite a small shop, and he has no other relief. Also, it seemed the shop has been there for 40 years, and which was originally run by his brother Raj Patel. And in fact, it was run so well that there's a brass plaque and a tree planted in commemoration of Mr. Patel's brother on the opposite side of the road. And so this shows that they have a good reputation of good practice in these premises. I don't see why this should change because the hours will be extended. I also propose that there seems to be a commercial property across the road from the Londish shop, and perhaps the drivers could pull in over there rather than on the side of the shop where there are more residents, so that perhaps it might be small, but it could relieve some of the noise that might be caused by these drivers. But Mr. Patel is anxious. Sorry, I've finished. I ran out of time.
Because you've done 10 minutes, but you have been incredibly helpful and covered a lot of the questions I think we wanted to ask you. So if you could just have another minute or so just to finish what you were saying, and then we're going to ask you a few questions.
I just wanted to say that, you know, he is a responsible individual. He's quite aware of what is, you know, what should not happen and what should happen. And for himself also, because he also lives very close to the shop. He wouldn't want to be disturbed by any drunken revelers and any noise and be responsible for causing any public nuisance or crime and disorder issues. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've covered a lot of questions that I had wanted to ask you, and now the committee is going to just ask you a few questions. Yeah. I'm just going to kick off with one myself, because one of the things that did occur to me when I was reading the papers was about the Abv limit, and you have suggested a limit on the Abv if during the hours if the committee were minded to grant the extension. So I just want to confirm that if we were minded to grant this application, that this variation, that you would be happy with that.
Yes, I have discussed it with Mr. Patel. And he said, yes, he would be. I suggested that this should be one of the conditions, and he agreed. He's fine with that.
Thank you. And then also about the single cans. Yes, we sometimes encourage other premises to do that with their label on. And so you think that's something that Mr. Patel can do? Yes,
I had a meeting with him on Friday. And we went through all the issues and things and points that I suggested that he accept or proposed, and he's fine with that. And he doesn't anticipate vast numbers of people coming. It's just that there is staff there until 5 a.m. every night, because they do stock taking and cleaning during the night. So there are people there. So he wanted to take advantage of the time that the staff were already there to extend the hours.
Understood. Thank you. And just a couple more questions before I turn to my committee colleagues. It was interesting what you were saying about the shutters. So that is a closed see-through grill. Is that?
Yes, and it's on the inside, so it can be manipulated from inside, and it can be closed from inside, but because of the glass door, obviously, and the holes in the shutters, you can actually see through quite clearly, because I went to look at it myself to make sure that this was so.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. And thank you for drawing our attention to the lack of issues reported by the police or by Mr. Patel. So just going through the objections, many of which you have already responded to in your submission. Thank you. The litter issue, that's something that you have mentioned, and what can you do to mitigate some of the
I spoke to Mr. Patel about this, and he said there was in fact a number of litter bins originally around nearby the shop and around the area. However, the local residents were dumping their domestic waste in these bins, and therefore the council saw fit to remove them because of that issue. It wasn't because of any other reason, but local residents themselves were using the bins for their domestic waste.
Okay. Understood. Sometimes, yes, they can be a magnet for people putting rubbish.
So we couldn't really think of how else we could deal with the issue of litter, unless Londis themselves put a bin outside. But then that doesn't stop the local residents from using that either. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to turn to Councillor Schmetling now, if I may, because I know he has a few questions regarding CCTV camera.
Okay.
Councillor Schmetling.
Right. Good morning, Ms. Aftermauer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Guten Morgen. That's
Right.
about it for me.
Yes. I do have a few questions. And as Councillor McVeigh already pointed out, you've actually addressed a number of the questions we did have. So that's good. Thank you. That'll shorten the meeting a bit.
Yeah.
First of all, regarding the CCTV, I mean, looking at the objections, trying to somehow take them into account, would it be, in terms of the CCTV cameras, I mean, this is a difficult one because of the rights to privacy for other people, but there's a claim that there are people, hanging out outside the shop. But well, they don't specifically say outside the shop, but there's people hanging out around drinking, which, well, I don't know. Is there any way one can use the CCTV and have a high quality picture? Although I think that there's a police definition of what that high definition means.
Yes, I have discussed this with Mr. Patel, and he assures me that this is already in place. And there was a camera outside which had been removed, but it's going to be reinstated. So we can see in both directions, to the left and to the right, of the street view in the vicinity of the shop. But I have also gone, when I've passed through the area, I usually try to go by, if it's late at night, to see for myself if there are any revelers or anyone hanging around the shop. And I've never seen anyone hanging around the shop. So the CCTV camera that's going to be placed outside should be able to uphold any of the licensing objectives, the crime and disorder objectives. It will be recorded 31 days. It will be high definition. It will be able to see in normal light levels for the time of day or night that it is. And it will be kept in good maintenance and good order. And so far, he has done that. So I'm only ensuring that he is aware and it doesn't become complacent if it's not working so well, okay, that's so what. I made him aware that these conditions for the CC cameras should be kept. So we
thank you. Thank you very much.
The
next question I have is, in fact, regarding litter, and this is a difficult one. I was interested to hear about the disappearance of litter bins because of local, let's say, misuse.
Yes.
What about having a kind of occasional, and we can talk about what that means, a litter patrol, particularly after 11 p.m. that the staff go out, say, I don't know, once or twice to go to, I don't know, within 5 meters of either side of the shop.
Yes.
Of course, if the stuff there hasn't got a Londis sticker on it, there's a question of where it comes from. It could be just passers-by dropping stuff. And given there's a bus stop outside the shop,
yes,
you can just imagine people waiting there, eating sandwiches and just dropping their paper bags on the pavement. So it's a difficult one. But I was just wondering about the this idea of an occasional litter patrol, say after 11 at least.
Reasonable.
Pardon?
I think that sounds very reasonable.
We did that. We did that. We had a case not so long ago somewhere else in the borough where a similar thing, extension of license and worry about this sort of thing, and that was accepted by the store. It must be onerous. It just must be occasional. One, say after 11 p.m., one at 11, and maybe one at whatever. If we are minded to grant the extension, then one after after midnight or something.
Okay.
So, okay, that's possible. Okay, just make a note. And the third one I have at the moment is the question of the delivery people, the couriers. Yes. We have a standard policy condition of having a courier policy, leaving it up to the premises as to how to handle it. But there would be a policy in place if we could show it to this after Moa somewhere, maybe you could find, would that be acceptable? We can show you the condition, if not this minute, but somewhere along the line, and you can see if you like it or not.
Okay.
Would that be interesting to look at?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, if you see the fact that I pointed out that it wouldn't be delivery couriers employed by the premises, they wouldn't be employed by Londis. They would be with large recognized companies like Deliveroo.
Oh, we know this. We are very well aware of this. And believe me, they need policies, because we've seen, admittedly not outside shops necessarily, the outside restaurants.
Yes.
Which is not the same thing. I accept that. It's a very different kind of experience, but we know they can congregate and make a noise after midnight. Yeah. We know that. So that's why we've developed policy.
I didn't say it, but I did write in my notes that we would encourage them not to congregate, and we don't anticipate them congregating because the alcohol would have been prepared beforehand, and so it would be immediately be handed to them and they would go off immediately. There would be no waiting done at all.
Well, okay, then we'll show you this a suggested condition which you can comment on at the time.
Okay.
Well, that's it for the moment. Thank you very much. I don't know if Councillor Healy probably wants to ask a few questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smettling. Councillor Healy, have you got any questions, please, for the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I found Arlene's responses to the objectors extremely helpful. There is one that I don't think she's dealt with, and it may not be acceptable, but Mr. Fassini, who has raised objections of this kind on other licence applications, says on page, I think it's 36 of his, that's the one, he says in the very last paragraph of his objection that extending the licence until midnight would be acceptable. Is that something that Mr. Patel would be willing to consider?
Yes, if you are not willing or able to grant the licence till 2 a.m., then Mr. Patel would accept it till midnight.
Thank you, that's helpful.
But it obviously wouldn't be his first choice.
Well, indeed. Could I also ask you to clarify something you said in your presentation about a letter from the council in June,
yes.
Responding to the COVID crisis, saying and asking businesses to consider extending their hours. Was that a general invitation to extend hours, or did it specifically apply to alcohol?
Yes, I can. Yes, it's addressed. It says addressed to the occupier, and it says, "Dear business owner, support for business is reopening. On behalf of the council, I am offering our support and advice to assist you in your plans to reopen your premises as the government lockdown eases. We know things have been incredibly difficult for you over the last few months with COVID-19, and we want to help our businesses get back on their feet. Protecting livelihoods as well as protecting lives is one of the council's top priorities, and we want to do all we can to get our local economy moving again safely." And then it goes and say all our service teams are working hard to ensure you can operate as effectively and COVID secure as possible. Some of the useful information you might find includes, I won't read them all out, but I'll read the one I think is pertaining to us. And one of these points is, if you are a business, if you are a food and beverage business, you may be considering extending your opening hours for the sale of alcohol. We recommend you submit your license variation now, as it may take up to 8 weeks to deal with, if we have representation against your application. So they have encouraged businesses to extend their licensing hours.
But in relation to COVID, as you'll be aware, from tomorrow, shops selling alcohol will not be able to do so after 10 p.m. Will that make any difference to the application? I mean, for about the next 6 months, even if we're reminded to grant you the extension or an extension, you won't be able to use it until next January.
Yes, I know, but could we have it in place until such time, then if you are going to grant it, that we would start immediately?
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy, and thank you, Eileen, for answering those questions.
Chair, could I just wanted to realise I want to follow up to clarify something about one of the points that I raised and that Ms. Aftermauer responded to positively. And that was the question of the extent of a potential, if we mind to grant, a potential litter patrol. Because if you look at the shop to the, I think to the west, there's one shop front to the corner. And of course, to the east, there's more. So I don't know whether we can define, 3-4 meters either side of Londis, or to the corner and the other direction equivalent distance, which is what? About 4 or 5 meters. Is there any other comment?
Councillor Smatting, I'm just going to jump in here for a moment. I would not like, if we were minded to grant this application, I would not like this to be part of a condition, but perhaps it's something that could be an advisory or a best practice. And so let's hear what Arlene says about that.
Okay. I think I would prefer if it were best practice, and I think they would adhere to it, because I have a tendency sometimes, even casually for my customers, I just pop in and what's that? What are you doing? And keeping an eye on them as well. And I think they would adhere to it, even if it were best practice.
Thank you. I mean, the reason I'm saying not making it part of a condition necessarily, I mean, we can discuss this in the closed session later, obviously, but I think it may be, given that we know the litter issues in the area are multifold and often come from Airbnb and from many other sources, I think it'd be quite onerous to put that requirement on one small shop to patrol a large area. But that's just my.
Yeah, and I agree. It's only this is not a particularly large area, but we can discuss it later.
Yes, and also one of the issues, something that I was rather perturbed about, if this is an issue with drunken revelers and noise and antisocial behaviour, if this has been going on for some time, how is it being dealt with? Surely it's a matter for the police and the licensing authority to have been dealing with it up to this point, and not to allow it to further, continue.
Thank you for that comment. Yes, if it relates to other premises, that will obviously come before the licensing committee regarding those premises, and our environmental noise and nuisance team as well will be enforcing various issues as well in the area. So any other questions, committee, before I turn to our legal team and our licensing officers?
No thanks.
No, thank you very much. I think everything's been dealt with.
Thank you very much. Heidi Titchcombe, do you have any questions, please, for the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to run through possible conditions that have been mentioned during this hearing. I have no idea what decision the committee will make, but if we are discussing conditions, we need to discuss them in the open forum, and it will be for the committee to decide whether they are going to grant the licence, and secondly, what conditions are appropriate and proportionate. Could you, but before I do that, could you just clarify this, what your position is in relation to granting a temporary licence? So I'm asking the applicant's representative. Can you just clarify what your position is on that? Is it that you want really a permanent licence?
Yes, we do want a permanent licence, but I was suggesting, and I suggested to Mr. Patel, that because there is this objection and anticipation of public disorder and public nuisance, that perhaps there is a probationary period where if any of this disorder or public nuisance is associated with Londis, then the license is rescinded and we go back to the original timings, if it can be proven that it was Londis who was responsible for this public disorder and public nuisance.
Well, in terms of the law, if the committee were minded to grant, say, these extensions for 6 months, then that would mean that your client would need to make a fresh application in 6 months' time, because it would then end on the 6-month date. There's no way. Unfortunately, there's no way in the Licensing Act to do provide a probationary license. So I just wanted to be clear whether on that basis you're saying, well, actually, no, you'd rather have the permanent license, or whether your client would understand and would be prepared to have the license for, say, 6 months or whatever period, and then reapply. And I would just, I suppose we should also consider that the Prime Minister has just issued new restrictions, which may prevent your client from actually operating anyway. And that potentially could go on for 6 months. So those are factors that you may need to consider. So it would be helpful to know what yours and your client's view would be on that.
Okay, well, I think we would still like to go ahead with the application for the permanent change and the permanent variation, and whatever conditions that are laid down by the licensing authority or by the Prime Minister, then we would have to adhere to those conditions.
Yes, okay,
we have no choice, in other words. But when there is an opportunity to make use of the extended hours, then we wish to do so.
Okay, and if that's very helpful, could I ask the person who's got control of this report to bring up page 2. Thank you. And I'm just referring you there to the 3 conditions that you've agreed with the police, whereby a personal licence holder will be on the premises at all times, and there will be a minimum of 2 staff on duty during the licensable activity. Well, I just want to query that term, because licensable activity will mean that the hours from 8 o'clock in the morning until midnight or 2 a.m, whatever it is. So
there will always be a personal license holder, but during the time from 11 p.m. till 2 a.m, there will be a minimum of 2 staff, one of which, or maybe even both, will have personal licenses.
Okay, that's helpful. I didn't think you wanted to have 2 during the entire day.
There were personal license holders there already, and then I trained 3 others.
Right, so there's 4 in total.
Yes, there's about 4 minimum in total, yes.
Right, so that will only apply from then. And then the next condition, it says an emergency button will be reinstalled, linked with the police. Yes. Is that linked with the police systems, or?
Yes, it will be. We'll be able to summon the police if there is any issue in the shop with any problems.
Okay, fine.
So it's a direct link.
Okay, that's fine. And then I'm going to try and put up some possible conditions that the committee may want to consider. I'm going to see if I can find them now. Just bear with me.
Yes, of course.
Yes. So if this is some conditions that may or may not be appropriate, but I'm going down to the bottom. Mm-hmm. Can everyone see this document? I'm just making sure that you can. Councillor Smettering suggested a Deliveroo condition, and that's number 14 on the list. And it says the premises licence holder, if they decide to have a delivery service through a courier company, then the premises licence holder shall operate a delivery policy which shall be adhered to at all times the premises are operating under the premises licence, i.e. that would include the time during the normal licensed hours in the day, and the policy should contain a strategy on the attendance of couriers waiting to collect food from the premises so that they do not cause a nuisance to neighbouring residents, and a copy of the policy shall be served on the licensing authority by no later than 21 days from the commencement of this delivery service. Would that be acceptable?
That's fine. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. And then you mentioned that there'll be no super strength. That's number 15. So no super strength beer, lagers or ciders over 6%. Or above shall be stocked or sold at the premises. Are you saying it won't be sold at all during normal hours?
What I suggested is that perhaps even if they do have super strength or otherwise, that during the normal hours up to 11 p.m. perhaps they could be sold, but from between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. that they are not sold and that they will be limited.
Right, so you want to limit it in terms of hours?
Yes.
So would it be from 10:30 on a Sunday, which is the current hours?
10:30 on a Sunday, 11 p.m. on other days.
Yeah, okay, got that. And then you did mention that all bottles and cans sold after 11 o'clock shall bear the Londis label.
All items, all the alcohol, all the beers in cans and bottles will have the Londis logo, even during normal hours of operation. So at any time you go, it should have a Londis logo on them. So it wouldn't be just specifically at night.
So that does include spirits and wine bottles?
Yes.
Right, okay. Okay, that's fine. And then if I can go back up to the top, would you be happy to have a dedicated telephone number which residents can contact if there are problems? This is one of our standard conditions. Okay. If there are problems, that residents have a number that they can contact so that they can get some direct action.
Fine, I will discuss that with Mr. Patel. I would have no objections to that. I don't see a problem with that. I will discuss it with him.
I need to know. We need to know the answer before the.
I will accept on his. I'll accept on his behalf.
Okay. And in terms of sometimes we have a meeting with the premises licence holder will arrange a 6-monthly meeting with residents. I'm not saying that the committee may or may not consider this as an appropriate condition because this is a shop. Would that be something that you think is proportionate or not?
What form would that meeting take? That's what I'm wondering.
It's normally relevant to bars and restaurants where they just set up a meeting, you know, presumably in the day, just to contact the local residents associations twice a year to see whether there are any problems. Now, you may say that you don't think it is appropriate.
I was thinking that they should contact the Londis at any time that there are any problems, rather than just wait until 6 monthly meetings, so that any issues are sorted there and then.
Well, that's covered by one. But is it right that you're not really minded to agree to? I'm not saying you. I'm not pressurising you one way or another. I'm just. we need to discuss the conditions. So I need to know which ones you're happy with and which ones you're not.
I will accept. However, as I said, I would anticipate that, you know, issues are sorted as soon as possible and not just on a 6-monthly basis. And we would be welcoming anyone who has an issue to come immediately and air their problems to the Londis when it relates to Londis. And also, maybe the meeting would be useful in terms of the residents and the businesses working together in the community safety partnership, so they support each other rather than, you know, being antagonistic towards each other.
Yes, I understand that, but this would be an if the committee put it on, this would be a condition that Mr. Patel would be obliged to comply with.
Okay, I will accept on his behalf again. Okay.
In terms of your operating schedule, you did put a training condition. So you said you'd offer a training condition. So this is the wording. Are you happy with that?
Okay, so refresher every 6 months, because they would have had training initially during the course.
Yeah, so do you think that that is too soon?
Yes, yes, that's fine. And
I mean, it doesn't have to be 6 months. I'm asking for your views as to what you would consider appropriate. You might say every year.
I think 6 months would be more appropriate. And also, I do usually make myself available to my clients, and so if they have any issues, if they have any questions, if they have anything that they regarding the Licensing Act or licensable activity, they're always welcome to call me, and I will always help them.
This training doesn't mean that they have to attend a course. You know.
Yes, I know. Yes. I know, but I do go in. I do sometimes go into them, my customers' shops and premises, and do refresher and just to check up on everything, how things are going. Because I feel responsible, as I'm the one who trained them to get the license in the first place, that I make sure that they are keeping up to date with and with all the different issues that come with and responsibilities that come with the license.
Okay, and this would replace condition 5 on the existing license, which is more basic, basically. And then the next one is the committee normally like a daily log to be kept of
yes, they do have one already.
Yeah, I thought that would be okay. Let's have a look at the next one. Now, there are no rubbish and refuse and delivery conditions on. 5, 6 and 7 obviously say that rubbish couldn't be deposited outside the premises between 11 and 8, and refuse collections can't take place between those times, and deliveries can't take place between those times. It's all about noise and nuisance, which may be caused to residents. Would they be acceptable?
With the number 7, deliveries to the premises shall not take place between 11 and 8. But what about collections? It doesn't state anything about collections. There will be no deliveries during that time.
Well, that just relates to deliveries. Yes,
just deliveries. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So 5, 6, and 7.
Sorry, Chair here. Sorry, Heidi. I'm just going to interrupt for a moment. I thought sometimes those deliveries, the hours were restricted between 23 and 7 a.m. the following day. You know, if someone gets an early delivery of daily milk or something, particularly for shops. I just want to draw that to the applicant's attention. I don't want.
Yes. Yes, that's a very, very good point. So if you're considering that in view of the merits of this application, you want to be less restrictive, so you want the start times to change to 7, that is within your discretion. So the applicant's representative should comment as to whether she thinks 7 o'clock would be better than 8.
Perhaps 7 would be better than 8, just for deliveries between 7 and 8, because they don't actually want to open before 8 o'clock to serve to the public.
Yeah, but what about your refuse collections and things? When does that take place?
Actually, I am not sure about that.
No. So shall I put 7 for all?
Yes, please.
Okay, fine, thank you. And then you've added a condition in your operating schedule that no alcohol or other drinks should be taken from the premises in an open container. So that complies with that. You've also offered a challenge 25, which includes
yes,
that.
in place already, yes.
Yeah, and then on 10 is really this discussion you've had about litter sweeps.
Yes.
And what's your view on that?
I think that's fair. And you've offered
do you
5
think meters. It's fair throughout the operating hours or just the extended hours?
Extended hours, I think.
And are you all right about staff going out at that sort of time in early hours of the morning, walking the streets, looking for litter?
The thing is that they do anyway, because there have been instances when there are people who have been drunken or lost their way at odd hours of the night, and the staff have even taken them home. And these are people that they don't know, or redirected them towards where they want to go. So staff are helpful, and and they have been making themselves available.
Okay, that's fine.
So they had nothing to do with the premises.
Sorry, it's the chair here again. I'm just going to intervene a bit here, because conditions on your license are absolutely a legal responsibility and can be an issue then for a review if you don't undertake any one, and each one is as important as the other. Yes. And so by putting a condition about this litter on your license, I would be slightly nervous if I was the applicant about the responsibilities of doing a litter sweep when you cannot potentially be completely in control of all the other litter issues. And by agreeing to it, I personally would be concerned, and I want to understand that. I want to be sure that you understand the implications of this.
Yes, I do, but I would prefer if it were really quite restricted to either side of the shop, rather than further down the street, and it be just anything that might be on either side.
May I make a comment here, because I raised the subject? Do you mind if I just jump in here?
Yes.
We had another case where we did put in as a condition this. I mean, I understand Councillor McVeigh's concerns, and it is a tricky business. I certainly would agree to, it has to be limited. My suggestion would be to do, if we are minded to grant, to just put it in for after 2300, frankly, because
that's what
the current situation is what it is, whether the shop's there, and it is. So there's no point in putting on something new that doesn't make any difference to anything. So I would suggest, first of all, after 2200, and I would define it as, I don't know, 3 meters or something either side, if that, something like that. We can discuss it, but that would be my thought, because the corner on the west side is about 4 meters away, isn't it? 3-4 meters.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to do the same distance either way, and it wouldn't have to be every 5 minutes. It'd be like once or twice. That's all.
Yes.
That's my thinking. I don't know what the chair or the lawyer would say to that.
I think it's totally within the discretion of the members. So you've heard what the applicant has said, and then when you retire to make your decision, you can decide, one, whether you think it's appropriate to put the condition on. It doesn't have to be put on. And secondly, if you do, what limitations you want on it.
Thank you.
And it could not be could it not be kept as best practice rather than a condition?
Yes, well, you can't really have an informative on these type of licenses, but it could be included in the decision to say that as a matter of best practice the operator, undertakes to do this?
Yes, I think I would go with the best practice, and I'm sure they would adhere to it anyway.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you.
And the next condition is just one to float. Is if you thought there was a problem of street drinkers, condition 11 could go on. Miss Mauer, do you think that's appropriate or not?
That is very appropriate, and in fact, I did discuss this with Mr. Patel, and because especially when they at night, they can see. They often can distinguish who are vagrants and street drinkers through the locked doors, because they do lock the doors at night, and they don't allow them in at all, because they know that street drinking is not allowed, and they don't want to encourage it, and they don't want them in the shops, because they might cause problems coming in the shops in the first place.
Okay.
So I have discussed it with Mr. Patel, and he's agreed. He said they do not currently allow any street drinkers into the shop at all.
Okay. 12 comes out because that's been replaced by the police condition, and then the CCTV condition is really reflecting the operating schedule as to what CCTV system you're going to install, which is a standard requirement. It has to comply with police requirements.
Yes, currently all satisfied.
Yes, and let me just check whether there's anything else you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think I've covered all the conditions that were discussed. So that's all the points I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, trying to unmute myself. So I'm just going to turn now to our licensing officer, Mr. Phelan. Do you have any questions, please?
None at this moment, thank you, Chair.
Fantastic, thank you. So, Arlene, if you want to go on mute, I think we have now got to the end of our hearing. Leonie or Martin, have you got anything from a governance perspective you want to draw our attention to that have come up during the hearing?
No, thank you, Chair, not from my point of view.
And nothing from me, Chair.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we now have all the information we need to make our decision, and we are reaching the end of this meeting, and we will retire to discuss this in private session. So the hearing will shortly close, and a summary of this decision will be sent to all parties within 5 working days of today's hearing, and a full decision will follow as soon as possible. So thank you all very much for attending, and this hearing is now closed. Thank you.